Sara Little, how are you?
I'm good, Maya. How are you?
I'm doing well, and it's very nice to see you. It's always nice to see you, Sarah. So I'm gonna start right away here, and I'm gonna ask you to please, first of all, introduce yourself to the audience and tell us what you do. Um, Obviously, you're a criminal defense lawyer, but where you practice and what kinds of cases do you do?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you, Maya, for having me. I know it took a while to get here, and that's on me. So I appreciate your patience. I'm really honored to be here, and I'm looking forward to our chat today. And it's always a pleasure to see you as well. I'm sorry I couldn't make it to the recent call conference this past weekend, but I attended virtually, and I hope I'll see you at the fall conference in a few weeks. A little bit about me. My name is Sara Little. I'm a second year lawyer. I practice in Ontario, mainly in Toronto. I was called to the bar in 2021 after I graduated from Windsor Law. I practice exclusively in criminal law, although my practice is a mix of both trial and appellate work. I would say I do a very wide range of types of offenses, from youth matters to adult matters, ranging from sex assaults, domestics, financial crimes, etc., and everything kind of in between. My practice is quite broad right now, so I can get a feel for all different types of offenses in different jurisdictions. I'm based in Toronto, although we do take cases across the province and sometimes outside of the province as well. I'm working on a case out in Alberta right now. So that's a little bit about my practice. After I graduated from Windsor Law, for my first year of practice, I completed a clerkship at the Court of Appeal. I've always had kind of a passion for appellate work. So that was a really great opportunity. And then I just finished my first year of private practice, now into my second year of private practice. So I'm looking forward to see what the future has in store for me.
Well, so that's what you've been doing as a lawyer, but you are actually known in the legal community even before you became a lawyer. And that's while you were still a student, you were working on this project, which is your project, but now you are working in collaboration with Iman Publishing. And it's the project that is called Little Legal Summaries. So if you can just tell us a little bit about that, because that's actually pretty huge. And that's how a lot of people know you from social media, especially through Twitter. So tell us a bit about Little Legal Summaries, Sarah.
Absolutely. So when I was in law school, two mentors of mine, Michael Lacey and Professor David Tanovich from Windsor Law, had both separately given me the advice to kind of catch up on recent appellate decisions daily. They're posted on the Court of Appeal website around noon or 1 p.m. Most days. And both of them had separately given me the advice they felt that a really good habit for young lawyers and all lawyers to develop is to read recent appellate jurisprudence as often as you can, because it really helps you stay on top of the developments in the law, and can only certainly benefit your practice. So, as a law student, I had started a little blog, a website that I created through Squarespace myself, called Little Legal Summaries. And that was kind of the inspiration behind it. And the goal was hopefully to keep me accountable of staying on top of appellate jurisprudence, at least in Ontario and also from the Supreme Court. And so I joined what we call Law Twitter a few years back when I was a student, and it's certainly grown over time. And I've continued my blog, Little Legal Summaries, since that time. I took a brief hiatus while I was at the Court of Appeal, but I relaunched my site last year when I returned to private practice, now in collaboration with Iman Publishing, which most viewers, I'm sure, know and love for the criminal law series. You can
Yes.
see my collection behind me.
Yes.
So, I certainly wouldn't endorse a product that I don't use or that I don't love. But it's been a really great collaboration with Iman to, add some legitimacy to the name, to allow me to continue providing the summaries at no cost, open access. And so we currently provide uh, monthly summaries of all what I view to be the kind of key or main cases and their takeaways from the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court in a given month. You can sign up on Iman's website. shameless little plug, but you can sign up on Emon's website to receive an email once a month to your inbox with those summaries. And there's usually also a discount code or some sort of financial benefit towards their criminal law series any given month, depending on the content of the summaries that month.
And speaking of Emond, we will have to give a shout out to Dana Halls, who's the main person behind Emond, and who's really very nice person, and also very friendly with criminal defense lawyers in particular. And it's very nice that he's collaborating with you on that project, which is your project, and that made you actually very known even before you became a lawyer. And in the legal community, we all appreciate your legal summaries. So, Sara, the main reason I want to have this interview with you today is because you are currently running for the position with the CLA, or the Criminal Lawyers Association, the recent call director, the Toronto position. So I am the recent call director for outside of Toronto up until this coming November. Then it will be someone new, and you're one of the people who are running. I know there's a competition right now for that position, for the Toronto position, and you're one of the people who are running for it. So tell us, first of all, why are you running, and what do you expect to do? What are your goals if ever you become the recent call director?
Absolutely. So we are in the midst, I don't know exactly when the video will come out, but we are in the midst of the CLA election right now for a number of positions. I'm personally running for recent call director within Toronto. Everyone who is a member of CLA should have received a ballot on October 26th, and voting remains open until November 16th, I believe, into the evening. And then the winners of the various positions that have not yet been acclaimed will be announced on November 17th at the annual general meeting at the fall conference. And so I urge anyone watching that is a CLA member, please vote, whether you vote for me or not. I should add that only recent calls, so that's anyone called to the bar 2016 or later, and that have an address located in Toronto, are eligible to vote for this particular role. But regardless of what role you're voting for, and regardless of who you vote for, I certainly encourage everyone to exercise their right to vote and to have their voices be heard in that sense. But to answer your question, I'm personally running for recent call director in Toronto. We do have a number of candidates running, so shout out to Samia, Sandra, and Liam. I know we're in for a good race, and I will be very happy for whoever wins. I'm personally choosing to run for this role. I think I've always viewed my role as a junior. I've always found myself aligned with students and junior members of the bar. When I was a student at law school, I found myself often advocating for students at Windsor Law and beyond within the criminal law sphere. So I kind of view this role as an extension of that. And particularly in terms of a platform, I think a problem that we've had in the criminal bar probably far before my time, but certainly is an issue these days, is that of attrition and junior lawyers, or recent calls as they're called, leaving the defense bar in droves. And it's happening at all levels of the bar. We certainly see senior and mid-level members leaving as well. But I think it's happening at, for lack of a better term, alarming rates with the junior members of our bar. And that's not at all meant to be a shaming for anyone who may choose to leave. There's certainly many reasons why people leave, certainly many valid ones. But I do think that one of the main reasons people are leaving, or junior lawyers are leaving the defense bar within their first year or 2 or 3 of practice, is really the lack of support that junior members are feeling in the bar. And so that's kind of the main goal or mantra that I want to kind of pursue during my election, and if I'm to be elected during my term as recent call director in Toronto. And there's a couple different ways I can see us achieving that. And both you and Tanya Kent, who was the recent call director in Toronto for the last term, have certainly left big shoes to fill. And I will certainly be continuing or would aim to continue a lot of the initiatives that you guys have started. And one of the main focuses, of course, being CPD or continued professional development. And CLA offers a lot of great low cost and no cost CPD, the recent call conference being one of them. And so obviously that would be a big focus. But I found during your term, both you and Tanya really focused on providing really high quality CPD aimed at recent calls. And I would be looking to continue those initiatives. I think particularly practical based or skill based CPD for junior lawyers is very helpful. I've always enjoyed the fall conferences. They tend to be about a variety of topics, but oftentimes catching up on developments in the case law. And I find that very helpful. But I also think that recent call CPD aimed at more practical or skill-based topics, how to run a bail hearing, how to prep a surety, how to do a jury opening, more practical skills that, let's be honest, law school doesn't really prepare you for, that juniors are struggling with in their first few years of practice, I think is certainly going to help juniors feel more supported, particularly juniors who are either out on their own, have started their own firms, or are working for sole practitioners, or who don't feel they really have that level of mentorship or support wherever they're working. So that would be one of the main kind of initiatives that I'd be looking to pursue or to continue the work that you and Tanya have done. Another kind of aspect of that in terms of helping junior lawyers feel more supported is, and I understand that this is in the works, but continuing and hopefully implementing a precedent database. And the CLA website does have precedents available on its website, although I do believe that the database is relatively dated. And so I think, one of the benefits I have working in a firm environment is having access to, an 11B precedent or a factum precedent for a section 276 or a 278 application. And that way you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Of course, you have to adjust it, apply it to the facts, do any additional research that might apply to your given case. But having a precedent as a start certainly takes some stress off from junior lawyers and gives them a really helpful starting point, especially those that, again, maybe have gone out on their own, are working in a smaller environment. So looking to implement that, I think, would be very helpful and very useful practical tool for all lawyers, but particular juniors who may feel like they're lacking that support. The other aspect, and we hear this word a lot, is mentorship. And I think, again, working in a firm environment, I'm very lucky to have kind of built-in mentors within the firm environment. Not everyone is lucky enough to have that. I think the pandemic has significantly affected that as well. I'm told, I wasn't around when this would happen, but I'm told that once upon a time, pre-COVID, you would go to the courthouse, for your set date appearance, and you would run into many senior members of the bar in the hallways, in the lawyer's lounge, in set date court, etc. And it would just be a very natural way to develop those kinds of relationships with senior members of the bar. And that really doesn't happen anymore in light of the pandemic and the moving things onto Zoom. And look, there are many, many benefits to Zoom. I, for one, am glad I can do set date appearances by Zoom and I don't have to drive from Brampton to Newmarket to Old City Hall, or I guess New Toronto Courthouse now, 10 Armory Street. So there are certainly many benefits to Zoom, but I think that's one of the drawbacks is that we're simply in courthouses less often, and there are just fewer people or fewer lawyers in those courthouses at any given time. And so for those who attended the recent call committee social in the fall, or it was the end of summer social event, I had a lot of fun at that event. First of all, the food was great. So was the gelato. Food to me is a hallmark of a good event. But beyond that, I thought it was such an enjoyable event and there was so much value to it because you were just able to mingle, although it was hosted by the recent call committee, you were able to mingle with so many senior members of the bar in an atmosphere that you otherwise wouldn't. And there were people who came from, all over the province, some from out of province like yourself. And so I think there's a lot of benefit to hosting socials that kind of help bridge the gap between senior and junior members of the bar. And there's a lot of value to formal mentorship programs. I know the CLA has one. I know WiCCD has one. But I think there's also a lot of value in informal mentorship that
Yeah.
just comes through those kind of organic relationships from these social events where you develop this relationship with someone and you can call them up next time you have a question about your file, or you want to get some career advice, or you don't know how to proceed tactically, with an upcoming trial, or whatever the issue may be. So that would be kind of the third, it's in no particular order, but kind of the other main branch is that mentorship, social aspect of it as well. And I think maybe the final kind of category or bucket that I would be looking to tackle is mental health, which is a topic that we talk about a lot more these days, but certainly has historically been something with stigma associated with it in the legal profession in general, and not something that historically a lot of people have spoken about in the legal profession until more recently. But my understanding is a lot of junior members of the bar leave because they don't feel supported largely in their mental health, and their hours, their workload, their work environments are maybe not conducive to a positive mental health. And so they often leave the defense bar for that reason. So I'm certainly open to suggestions on that front of how we can better support junior members and their mental health. Some of the ideas I would have are maybe, I don't know if you're familiar or if any viewers are familiar with Doran Gold on Twitter. He's a former lawyer who's now a counselor, and he offers mental health support, particularly for lawyers or those in the legal profession. So maybe having a CPD with him to explore different coping mechanisms and tools for junior lawyers and things like that. But I think that's certainly an area that can be explored further. And, maybe we, as the committee, come up with ideas of how best to tackle that, or even asking the recent calls themselves, how best they would feel supported. I do think the other aspects, the CPD, the mentorship, the socializing with senior members of the bar and connecting junior members of the bar as well, so that they feel, if, for example, they're the only junior at their firm, or they've gone out and hung their own shingle, that they have that support amongst recent calls as well. I think that will also contribute to positive mental health and allowing people to feel they have an adequate support system within the bar. But yeah, that's a very long-winded answer to your question, but that's what I would be looking to accomplish if I were elected as
No, and these are all very good points, Sarah, and that's definitely what we're seeing as a problem right now in the defense bar, and especially with junior lawyers. I mean, the problem that the defense bar is facing right now is that we're losing so many really talented and really good lawyers for the reasons that you mentioned. That, well, of course, there's also the other main problem that defense lawyers have to deal with, and it's money, right? Like, there isn't enough funding. There's a problem with legal aid. However, there seems to be some kind of improvements now in the works from on the legal aid side, but again, it's not enough. It's very difficult sometimes for lawyers, especially when they're still new, to get private retainers. But I do want to go back on a few points among the things that you mentioned. So there's this mentor in relation to the point you made on mentorship, because I was practicing. I actually started my practice before COVID. So I do remember the days when I used to go to court, and that actually is how I was able to develop my practice. And it's by just going to court and meeting all the lawyers. All the senior lawyers were just in court. And it was so easy to see them and talk to them and connect with everyone. And unfortunately, this is something that we lost now, even though we're getting more into in-person appearances, but I don't think it's ever going to be like it used to be before COVID. And it is very important to be able to bring people together and to connect a junior with senior counsel. And like you mentioned, it doesn't have to be a formal mentorship relationship. It could just be, like having someone that you feel comfortable calling and discussing a case with them. Now, mental health is another big problem that we're seeing right now in the defense bar. A lot of people are just so tired because we have this backlog of cases. We have this new protocol that's forcing us to kind of now speed things even more, which I think is going to make even more problems for us, because I mean, it's already difficult to manage everything. But mental health is also another problem that we're facing right now in the practice of law. There's a lot of work, not enough time, not enough lawyers to do the work. So, I mean, it is nice that you are aware of all these issues that are currently in the bar and that are really the main concerns that we have as criminal defense lawyers. And I mean, it is not an easy task, I can say. I mean, Tanya and I really, we tried our best. Um, I hope you were able to do, even if it's a tiny step, just to improve. But I mean, I'm very happy to see that you have all these points in mind and that you're looking to implement them. Is there any, like, um, how are you thinking though of, so, like, is there any specific way that you think that you're going to be implementing, for example, in the case of mental health? Like, more specifically, if you wanted to address that issue and how you can, make sure that lawyers feel less, like drained by the practice of law. What are some of the things that you are suggesting to do to address that problem?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, you and Tanya took way more than a tiny step. You're not giving yourself enough credit. You guys,
Well, thank
first
you,
of all, had
Sarah.
lots of great recent call conferences, lots of other great CPD. Again, the summer social at the end of term was a lot of fun. And you guys did a lot more beyond that. Those are just some of the highlights. Again, the mental health topic is very tricky, and I don't think there's a one size fits all solution that will just, having, like I mentioned, maybe a CPD with counselors or like Dora and Gold. I think there's a lot of benefit to that. Do I think that will magically solve everyone's mental health problems in the profession? No. Mental health is dynamic, it's evolving. Um, it's not just this kind of band-aid fix. It's something that requires work over time. But I think what we can do as recent call committee, or if I'm elected as recent call director, is helping juniors feel more equipped with the right resources to address their mental health. And I think part of that will come from, for example, a CPD with Warren Gold about coping mechanisms, about ways to take care of yourself during the profession in a way to develop certain boundaries, etc. Part of that will also be about making juniors in recent calls maybe more aware of the resources available to them, whether through CLA or through the Law Society. I wasn't aware personally until quite recently that the Law Society of Ontario has the member assistance plan,
Yes.
which offers a lot of free mental health support for members. So I suspect that if I didn't know about it, certainly I couldn't. I'm probably not the only one who doesn't know about it. Maybe I am. Maybe I was late to the party. But I think helping juniors in recent calls be more aware of the resources at their disposal so that they don't feel so alone.
Well, and not just more aware, because I think even if people are aware that there are resources to address mental health, I think there's a lot of stigma, right? Like a lot of lawyers are
Absolutely.
afraid because they think, well, I don't want to be known as a lawyer who has mental health problems because maybe that might be viewed by clients as a bad thing. And mental health, I mean, it's not just schizophrenia or, like
No.
those types of problems. It's just, like a lot of work can cause mental health problems. It can cause anxiety. It can cause, sometimes depression. And the type of work that we do is very heavy. Not a lot of people can practice criminal law because of the facts that we have to deal with on a daily basis. So I think for some lawyers or some people, sometimes it is embarrassing for them to say or to admit that they're struggling on the mental health front. And I think that maybe one thing that will be important to do is to kind of get rid of that stigma and just make people feel that it's okay to have these problems and to talk about them and to attend those CPDs, because then you have also the issue of like you have these resources available. I wonder what the statistics are as to how many people are actually using them. I mean, you just recently found out about this, so that's the
Yeah.
problem, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And I would be curious to know those statistics as well. I would suspect that the numbers are probably a lot lower than maybe we would
yeah,
think because of that stigma. I am generally not that much of an optimistic person. I think very few people would describe me as optimistic. But I do have some optimism that the stigma around mental health is changing, particularly as we have more senior members of the bar and the judiciary talking about mental health.
Yeah.
I know in the last few years at the opening of the courts, the chief justices have addressed mental health. And so we have, the more people talk about mental health, the less stigmatized it will be, I think. And so having CPDs about it, where, you know, senior members of the defense bar speak, whether it's about their own personal experience with mental health or different ways they protect their mental health, I think will help make it less stigmatized for junior members to know that it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. Even the most successful members of our bar likely struggle at some point in their life with mental health. And as you point out, it doesn't need to be necessarily, you know, schizophrenia or bipolar, etc. It can be day-to-day stress, burnout is obviously quite common these days, or a term that gets used a lot these days, anxiety, depression, etc. And so I agree, we have to make it less stigmatized. I think the more we talk about it, the less stigmatized it will be. And I think the mentorship aspect that I discussed also really plays into the mental health aspect. Because I think a feeling that a lot of juniors have is feeling alone in the profession if they haven't developed or haven't had the opportunity to develop those relationships with other juniors, but also with senior members of the bar. And I think we really can't underestimate the value of having a very strong mentor or mentors in the bar, in the profession. And so the more we can develop and increase those kind of organic mentor-mentee relationships within the bar, I think the better off a lot of people's mental health will be. Because it's not just about knowing the resources, etc. It's also having someone to talk to when you need someone to talk to and someone you can share these things with. So those are kind of some of the ways that I think the recent call committee can address mental health.
And Sara, so I know I mentioned Twitter, so that's one way people can see what you do. You're very active on social media, but what other platforms can you mention where people can find you if, let's say, they want to know more about you, if they're deciding who to vote for? So you have a Twitter account. What is your handle on Twitter?
I should probably know that by heart. Let me pull it up. Sorry. It's Little, so my last name, Little, legal underscore. And you can also find me by looking up Sara Little on Twitter, and that's Sara with no H, Sara. Or as I say in court, Little, first initial S.
Yes.
I'm also on LinkedIn. I don't use it a ton, but I am on LinkedIn. That's just under my name, Sara Little. You can also find a lot of information about me on my website, which is littlelegal.ca. There's a page. I have Little Legal Summaries, which is aimed at, as we described, summarizing recent appellate jurisprudence in criminal law. There's also a section on my website about me, about my practice, about the type of work that I do. And then there's also a section that I call Little Legal Information or Little Legal Info. That's more so aimed at either law students or potential clients that are looking to learn a little more about the basics of criminal law, the different types of offenses, like basic legal procedure, kind of demystifying a little bit about the legal process in Ontario and in Canada. So you can certainly learn a lot more about me on that website. And then I would also encourage everyone to check out the CLA election page. I think you can just Google Criminal Lawyers Association 2023 election. There's a page dedicated to the election, which sets out, all the timelines and the deadlines and things like that. All the candidates for the different positions are listed there as well. And those who have submitted a written platform have their platform on that website as well. So I encourage everyone to check out the platforms and make an informed decision. And again, regardless of who you vote for, I hope you vote for me, but regardless of who you vote for any position, just make sure you vote. It's an important right that we have, in Canada, but also for an organization like CLA who represents, criminal lawyers across the country.
Yes, and I would encourage everyone to actually look at your socials and your website, because you do also provide a lot of valuable information through your legal summaries to everyone. It's not just for junior lawyers, it is also beneficial to senior lawyers. So it is something that is really very good, and it's a nice contribution to the profession that you even started when you were still a student, even before you became a lawyer. So, Sara, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me today and to discuss your goals and plans for running as the recent call director for Toronto in the upcoming CLA elections. I honestly wish you the best of luck, and I would encourage everyone who's watching to go and read more about Sara if you don't already know who she is, although she's pretty known in the legal community, especially on Twitter. And I really wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Maya, and thank you again for having me.
My pleasure.